All right, good evening and happy Sunday, everyone. We are back at it again. We're going to look into some charts, get ourselves ready for Monday, and see what the market is giving next week. So I'll take you through a few charts, and we'll see if we can kind of have a game plan, at least get some levels in for some of the tickers that you guys are watching. Again, like, subscribe, as always, comment if you like the video. Let me know if you're watching something that I didn't cover, and maybe I can touch bases with you and we can look and compare our notes for those charts as well. So we will go ahead and jump right in to not make this a long video. We'll start with ZOM. All right, let's take a look at ZOM, see what we're working with. So I'm just looking at the weekly just to kind of get an idea of what we are looking at overall. Obviously, ZOM has been on a big run for quite some time. When you look at it from a weekly perspective, they have not returned back to the 200 weighted moving average since breaking it all the way back in 2021. I don't see that we've tapped it until now. So price is really just catching back up and pulling back. So it's been pretty wide space here. And as you can see, we've now fallen right back to the 200 on the weekly. And that is leaving us around the 104, 108 range for ZOM. So if we look at last week and just see how things went, ZOM had a low for last week of 103.67 and then a high of 112.16. We are getting the wolf arc. So we're getting the WTMA arc. We're above the 200 with price. We did come in wick pretty low, which is a nice wick and bounce. So that was a good recovery for ZOM. And now they're right at the 12. So they're actually trying to reclaim the EMAs and get price above both of those. So there was no crossover when price kind of was wedged in between here. We just got a pretty narrow state. And it looks like what we're trying to do is break. I would say we're looking at breaking about 112.51. But let's zoom in a little bit more on ZOM. And we're looking at the daily now. Okay, so we have a supply zone that was created around February 20th, right? So we had a pullback from February 20th right here when we tapped this area. So we pulled back all the way to the low point of 103.67. Now, what we really want to see ZOM do is if they're going to have a move and breakout and gets out of this basically this box. So they've basically been trading in this box since December. So you're getting a range that they trade in right now that's about 112 down to 104. Um, More like 104.75. And so we got that wick right under on this last pullback. I think we were actually trading it here, actually, in puts, but the recovery once it pulled back here was really good. Nevertheless, we're still in this box. Your key breakout would really be to get out of that box. And then once they break out, I have it at about 112.55. Let's see. And when you're just scrolling to the left, you can see that this area has been a key area where prices came back to. We've lost it, we've reclaimed it, kind of played around here. So I do like this target price of probably basing it off of this candle here, 112.51. And that gets us a breakout on the daily above the supply zone. All right. And then what we're likely to test is trying to reclaim the 200 on the daily time frame, which puts us at about 113.28. When we do that, we can look to test somewhere around 114.80. And then we have a fair value gap that we have not returned back to yet that we will likely come back and test from the daily. And that's at about 114.06. So you may get some chop one if ZOM does break out of this 112.51, reclaim the 200. Where you want to look is around 114. Well, actually, you want to look around 114.83 and then also around 115.62 as some potential resistance areas. And we're just looking at key areas on the daily time frame. So if they were to have a breakout, one thing is obviously we want them to break out of this box that they've been trading in on a daily. Um, you can also measure your high and your low of your previous day candle and see what you get. Do you get an inside day? Do we get more of a continued push to try to break out of this zone? Or do we pull back? And then if we pull back, where are we going with that? So you can also just measure this candle here, high and low points, and then see if price is above it or below it, and trade ZOM like that. Let me just see if there's anything else to pay attention to, because otherwise they're really, again, just trading in that range. Yep, they're fighting some selling pressure as they approach 110. So on the 4 hour, you can see it to 112.81, 112.87 is probably the better breakout because that clears the 4 hour as well. So I kind of would just label it like this. And once we can get that breakout, when you look at it from here, it's even cleaner of a move. We know we get some choppiness around 114.80, 115, but yep, 118.19. Then we have some more upside around 121.49. So we can keep an eye on ZOM for a breakout, but again, nothing special. Well, I'll say this. This is a nice trading range. I won't say nothing special, but the key breakouts would be here, or if they were just to lose the support under 104.76. And when I was watching it on this particular pullback, they definitely lost that support, but they also wick right back up, and then price started to actually move back up and try to hold over at 104.76. So ZOM is something to watch. I will actually set myself. I do have an alert already here. Have an alert here. And then you just look to see if we pull back to test some support. But we're getting the wolf trend moving average arc, which is that crossover inverted arc. And so that's given us a signal of a reversal in the trend from when we pull back from this arc here. So that also is a nice signal. We just know that we have some resistance ahead. So that's the real story of ZOM. You can just again measure your range for the day and then kind of trade inside of that, knowing where your key breakout points or break under would be somewhere around here. I don't know if ZOM would actually pull back that low without any type of significant news to drag it that low. I mean, they did pull back to like 95.77 in January. So, I mean, will we do that again in March? I don't know. But also kind of looks like that double top form when we were at this high in November, December. And then now we're just getting those pullbacks. We still have a bit of a move right here on the monthly where we are on we're testing the 12. And I mean, you see where the 200 is positioned. So I don't know if we would truly expect price to pull back. But again, I would have to see what type of news would actually impact ZOM to get to get that low. Can't say it won't happen. They'd have to definitely break probably this low right here to start pulling back even lower. ZOM has earnings as well, April 25th. So just something to look out for. All right, so let's look at flat and see what we have going on with CAT. So on the monthly, obviously they've been in an uptrend and basically price has pulled back to test the 12 EMA here. Um, I'm going to take this off. We're getting the inverse arc. So that's one signal that we are now looking at potential reversal because we're getting the arc and the crossover. And as you can see, as that's forming, price is pulling back. Where did price pull back to? Well, on the monthly, we are on the 12 EMA. There is a wick there, but they pulled back as low as 318.68 and they closed at 350.30. So really nice recovery if you were trading CAT. Let's see what they have here. Okay, they have earnings in April. That was a really nice pullback and recovery. They definitely came pretty low here. Wick right through this zone and bounced. We did not grab the 200 yet on the weekly. They're being held by this order block right here. And so I'm just thinking that if price is going to hold here, we do want these EMAs to start. We want the price to get above these EMAs. Now, there is a fair value gap to be mindful of from this candle here. So this candle here gave a pretty aggressive sell-off, which created a fair value gap. And so price could come back and test about 369.66. And if so, that could be where you get your reaction and a pullback, a pretty probably a bit of a strong pullback because this is the weekly time frame, and I do like to see how price reacts to any type of fair value gap, supply and demand on the weekly. They just tend to be a more significant reaction as soon as we touch it. So something to watch. Again, they're in an uptrend. We have to wonder, do they come back into this area here at some point and test the 200 because they've been away from it and they have not technically touched the 200 weighted moving average since 2022. Came pretty close here, but we're now again just far away from it. So we just have to see if that would actually play out at some point. That is the weekly, so let's get to the daily. All right. On the daily, I do like this. This would be a good point where I would definitely want to know the high and the low of Friday. Friday they had a $9 move. And then you see where they can go, right? If you're looking at it from the daily, we have a nice chance to come about right here to 369.66, which puts us close to this 200 um on my chart. So that's a nice bounce if they can actually make that move. But let me go back real quick because one thing we have to keep in mind is we do have this. So I'm going to mark that 369.66. We're going to mark that as a weekly fair value gap. All right, so that will follow me along. So as I'm watching it from the daily, it puts us right again where we were looking at coming to from that aggressive sell-off here. So that's a nice view just to have that in your face to know that from the weekly we do have some resistance here to pay attention to. Outside of that, you can measure the high and the low of the candle, 341.91, and then 339.40 for the low. We're getting a nice crossover from the WTMA. We're trying to reclaim the 12 EMA, and then doing so and breaking out of the high to lead us to testing this 200. We are going to zoom out just a little bit to see if there's anything we need to catch. So see, we have more when we pull it back to a smaller time frame where they can meet some more resistance around 358, I'm sorry, 352.80, which they did not hit and but they came pretty close. It does not mean that they can't clear this zone with the right amount of buyers. We just know that there can be some choppiness here on the once we hit that area from basing it off the 4 hour. So 352.80. All right, and you can see it here when you're just looking at price. It has been here before, and now we had some choppiness here. And when it lost the support, that's when we got that sell-off. So it is a zone to watch. And then breaking out of it would be 358.88, which could then lead us to around 363.14. Your breakout point would be 369.66, and then we could just keep on trucking from there. But I do like the signal here. I do like that price did react really nice to this zone here as soon as we were touching it, and it did this bounce. So it's actually pulling. We'll have to look to see what type of reaction we get if we are to touch 352.80. LM, LMT. All right, so for LMT, we actually have price reaching. Whoa, they had a $15 move on Friday. Wow. That was a really nice move. And then we came right to the 200 on the 4 hour and actually filled a gap from, we actually came back to the price that we had at I'm sorry, on January 28th, which is a high of 379.73. This one touched oops, hold on, let me get this again. The high of this candle was 479.73. I keep saying three. 479.73, and then price came back to 477.49. So reclaiming the 200 can take us to probably this area 393.45, and then we have some selling pressure on the 4 hour at 396.90. Yeah, they might be targeting this area here, right around 395. 50-ish, and then they can come as close to this 200 on the daily. And then obviously if price can get above here, it's even better. So I mean, measure the high and the low. That's a big range they can trade from. Their overall daily candle had a move of $12.15. So a good range to trade inside of, but even better getting a breakout because we see we can get to about 495. And then we see that losing that, we can probably come back and test 453, 452, and so forth down. There is a demand zone at 428.35. So whoever caught that trade, that looks really good. Ultimately, they're still in a downtrend when you look at it. And could this just be a lower high, right? They're still under the 200. So they came back after a nice run, looks like some earning momentum, and they sold off pretty aggressively, honestly, and came to 200, did a little bit of a bounce, and then they lost it. And so we're all the way here. Interesting position for LMT. I do like how they reacted in the zone, but we just need to know where we have our nearest resistance. If we're going to target anything, it's definitely going to be around that 495 area. So yeah, I would still keep them on watch. They obviously have some momentum building up for them. Just know that overall on the daily, the trend is still a downtrend, but they have reclaimed the 12 EMA, and we're getting the inverse arc signal from around here. So interesting to see. All right, so I don't have too much more to say on here. Again, they had a really nice move on Friday. Measure the high and low, that's your range, your key range, and then follow your EMAs from your smaller time frame, knowing that your key support and resistance will be if we come back to test the high or the low. A nice breakout of a 477.03 would be ideal as well. Yeah, this was a really great trade. So again, congratulations to whoever was paying attention and caught this one. It looks good. QQQ. I do have an interesting little teaching lesson on QQQ. So let me get to it. All right. So I do have 11 indicators say, guys, but when I'm helping people, I just try to have my chart matching what setup they use when we walk through their charting. But something interesting to consider that I've used before, I think I was doing this well before I got the wolf chart, was, and I wish I could remember exactly where I got it from. I think it was Oliver Valerius. But ultimately, following the last, I guess you can say 30 minutes of the day on Thursday, right? So I'm just going to clean this up to about maybe the last hour, last 15 minutes of the closing day. And then I'm going to drag that out. We'll just pretend like Friday isn't even there, but I would prep my chart sometimes to look like this. Okay. It's not ORB, but it is looking at how we closed on Thursday and then how we open. And so what you're looking at, if you're looking at just the last few minutes or the last hour of the day, and as you can see, it was just this range here. Like you can make it more cleaner, more exact. I could probably pull this back down to here, and that's my range. So when we came and opened on Friday, if you just were looking at this and you just were basing it off, okay, this was the last hour or so of Thursday, and this is what price did. It stayed in this range here. This was the high point, and then these were the low points. Well, when we opened up on Friday for QQQ, we started here with this candle. If you were using ORB, you can see that we broke that. And what we did was we came right to the top of this box, which technically you would look to the left and see that that is a resistance based on this wick. And even though price tried to break out of it, there's no candles outside of that range that we were basing our opening range based on yesterday's closing point. And so all we did here is the rejection and the sell-off. Well, for my people that like the 9, the 200, and the 20, we'll just layer that in for you guys. And let's see what that looks like. One, you could have referenced ORB based on this candle here. Let's zoom in just a little bit for the lesson. All right, so if we were using ORB, this is our opening candle on Friday. This is the candle that starts to break it. This one as well is a very big bullish candle, but your nearest resistance is right at the top of the box. So yes, you could have caught a good trade. I mean, this is from support at 486, 486.99. We get the gap up, test the EMAs here, and then we move right to what you can almost consider your well, yeah, you consider it like resistance. Your area here, which is based off of this rejection wick and high point of the closing range of the previous day, which was Thursday. Again, we start to get weak here. An aggressive selling bearish candle comes here. We get sellers pulling it right back. And so you easily could have said, okay, we're opening and we have a nice move for the first uh opening of the day, right? Almost the whole 30 minutes after we open. Then we get this aggressive sell-off, and then we pull back and we pull back right to some support here, which to see this support, because price hasn't been here, and I mean, as you can see, I would have to go so far back to find it. Um, so with that, oops, I didn't mean to zoom my screen in like that. So see, we haven't been here in a while, this low. That's when you got to kind of look ahead, look out a little bit and see where we've been before. And you can almost base it off of this gap up here, right? Like look at the gap up from this candle here. Obviously, we had some buyers. This is around election time, right? I think this would have been election voting. Yeah. And so we closed the gap and we fell to the 200 here. So this is where you would have buyers basically wanting to step in, which you could draw like a demand zone here, expecting that we have buyers that are willing to pick QQQ up here. And this is also where our 200 is positioned. And so now you have a green buy zone. Okay. Now, if we take it back just a little bit, look at the 4 hour. Now you have something to base it off. In the 5 minute, obviously we couldn't see all the way back to November without like going crazy to the left. So that you could just zoom out and just know your target points from here. And so you would have that support clearly basing it off the candles here. Um, at about 484.25. So when we did the pullback on Friday, what did we do? 480.53. So we even lost at 484. So this was a beautiful move to catch to close out Friday before we got the recovery after the Fed was out the way. So QQQ technically was in a demand zone from higher time frames from the election gap up. But you can see what price does. Even in here, we had the pullback. You just want to be cautious. So in addition to looking at the closing range of Thursday, so the last 15 minutes or so, we looked to see what price was going to do. It did not hold out of that closing range and we rejected and we pulled back, found support. It would look like a wick probably if we were looking at this from the daily, right? And then once we got basically like a bounce up, formed another bottom, and then we get this beautiful, beautiful recovery right to the 200 on the 5 minute. But I still have a lot to see about QQQ. I know we still have CPI and PPI to get out of the way, so we've been through this many times to not be caught off guard by the data that's dropping. There goes your wick I was telling you about. Wick right out of the demand zone, but then did a nice recovery. So you can get used to actually drawing your own demand zone boxes where you see buyers popping in. So I just wanted to show you that. So if you think that might be a cool strategy to test out, why don't you just try it, maybe do some back testing. I've used it before and it does work out pretty well, just measuring the last range of the previous day. It kind of correlates to the high and the low point, but it is solely looking at the last like 15 minutes or 30 minutes of a closing. So just another tip or strategy you can try out, see if you like it. You still have to know overall where stock is going. So right now we're seated on the 200. This is a 200 EMA, and we are in a demand zone that we've seen before here. We've closed the gap from this period in November. We've come full circle, and now we just have to see what happens next. Obviously, we don't want to see price below the 200. Okay, I'm going to put my wolf chart back on. You know me, I use it. And hey, look at that. Demand zone pretty much comes pretty close to what we have on the wolf chart. I am going to hide these EMAs and we'll keep on trucking. Let me know what you think about that little strategy. I know I've used it with a few people in Discord early on in my days, and it actually was working. So I think it's a pretty cool strategy. I've heard a lot of people since my last videos telling me how they have been measuring the high and the low of the previous day. We're going to do the same thing with QQQ going into Monday. We're going to measure the high and the low points. We're also going to know that at the bottom of this demand zone, it gets a little scary for QQQ. So I do have that on watch, and that is at 477.40. All right, let's keep moving. We had MSTR. So what are we doing here? Now, I don't know how they're going to open because I thought I saw Bitcoin pulling back. Let's see. I want to keep KHC as a little bonus to go over. So I'm going to add it to the watch. I think it's already there. Is it? Yeah. But let's go to Bitcoin real quick. Yeah. Yep. Bitcoin pulled back to this weekly fair value gap too, but they've been here before. And as you can see, as soon as price came to this area here that we formed in November, look at the wick. Immediately bounced. I mean, insane recovery. But then we still just sold right back off. It just isn't a good story. I don't know what's happening with Bitcoin. I have to, I guess, read up on any news that might be influencing it. But I mean, they're back right here at what I have as support. And there's wicks, but they're holding price above it. So maybe this will hold as support. If not, maybe we'll come a little bit lower into the 70, 75, 76,000 area. But for MSTR, they basically bounced above the 12 and then pulled back right to it and pretty close again to price touching the 200 on the daily. We did get the arc, the inverse arc and the crossover on the wolf trend moving average. Price wicked as soon as it touched this zone here. But overall, I mean, we'll have to see what the week gives us on MSTR. If they were to recover, you need them to hold price above 304.04, 311.28, 320.94. And there's some areas in between you can go find on smaller time frames. And then you have selling pressure as soon as you get to about 323.71. I did notice also futures were a little bit down, or a bit down. So we'll have to see how the market does at opening. MSTR, actually, I can take a peek and see overnight what they're looking like. Oh, they are down 20 bucks. So they're down to two. They've already lost the previous day low. They've lost this candle. They're down to 266.94 right here somewhere. Yeah, that doesn't look good. Hopefully no one was holding calls. Your moves were here. And this was more than enough to, even if you only did this candle, that's a $33 move. This one was an additional, well, it lost $4, but it did spike up before that all the way to 320. So, um, they're down about 19, $20 overnight. We'll have to see. But again, Bitcoin is also down, so I'm not surprised. Nothing here. I guess what you would want to see is if price can get to about 367.15 and hold support, and then in the 350s. NVDA. NVIDIA, I've been looking around the 110 area and saying that they basically need a hold around that area, and they did hold. So I would say 110.22 and mark that on my on my calendar, on my chart, 110.22. So we got the wick from that support, and you see that price immediately reacted to it. Outside of that target, oops, I didn't want to take the 110 off. Where'd it go? I guess I want to leave that 106.60 as well because that's where we're going to have a demand zone that we can come and test. It just looks like we want to come there. But there is the wick, so we didn't even get that close. We got pretty close. And my whole thing was once we lose 110, 23, 110 area, just be watching. So from losing that, we came as low as 107.56. So you do have your range for Monday with the high and the low of this candle. And then you just want to go and chart it out. This candle right here should have been a clue, right? Like we had this nice move at support, same area. And then we get a wick here. And then this candle was just super weak on the Wednesday. And then we get the gap down. So nothing too special about NVDA, to be honest with you. Let's look a little bit further out. Okay, there are the 12. Here's your arc. Here's your crossover. Um, they pulled back here. And just to imagine NVIDIA coming back to the 90s, we'll just have to see. But I don't see anything telling me that they're technically having a strong recovery yet or best signal of a recovery. I do know that people are going to start buying at some point because we just don't know how low will they go. And it's NVIDIA, so everyone's like, I don't want to miss the perfect buy-in opportunity. So they're buying some of the dip on NVIDIA. Unfortunately, I've seen people buying the dip and then it dips some more. So this wick was a good signal that maybe we have support now. Maybe buyers are definitely stepping in here. You got to remember we were here in September and we definitely got a lot of buying support. So this is the weekly. Not surprised that as we get here, we're getting buyers to step in because we've done it before. So this week is one good signal to consider. I think we also have from the 4 hour. All right, so it's to be determined. I would just say measure your high and your low in NVIDIA and then also just have these key points that 110.22, that 106.60, the high and low of the previous day, and then follow your EMAs from your smaller time frame if you're looking to trade them or find a good entry point. All right, we're almost through with the list. I have Palantir, SoFi. I'm not going to cover SPY. You guys probably just need to check out Defresh and look at Chris and see what they posted about the SPY. I'm going to keep it QQQ, and then we're also going to go over my bonus, which is KHR. So Palantir is kind of trading in a box too. When you look at it, like Zom had that box. Support 78.58 is what we probably need to keep on our charts. All right, 78.58. I'm gonna take this off. I don't know if that's still truth. But yeah, we do have a box that they're kind of trading in. Even when they tried to get out of that range, they did pull back. So with this one, I would keep this high 88.34 as something to follow. Okay, and then you also want to just measure your high and your low candle. What we're looking at is, I want to go to the daily. Just get back to the daily. What I never liked about this was that we lost this support here. I mean, technically, it really wasn't support until we got here. I think I drew that line once we were around here. Yeah. So support really was at about one, it would be here. 84.80 was key support for Palantir. And they came to that price again after a pullback when they first hit 84.80. See the pullback, and then they recovered, and then we had the earnings gap up. Let's toss in a Anchor VWAP for a second. I think this would have been earnings. Yep, they're under their earnings Anchor VWAP as well. They're under the 12. We do have the wolf trend catching up to the candles here. So maybe we're going to get an arc. The thing is, they do need to hold support at that 78.54 that I have on my chart. And then doing so, they'll probably, if they lose it, they can come around 76, 77. And obviously, we have this demand zone around $65. Otherwise, you're just looking for the breakout. And one key breakout, I would say, would probably be that 88.34 area. Where did we close in a weekly? Yeah, they were definitely fighting to keep up with the previous week's price. Definitely a fight. Look at how that almost lines up perfectly. And when you plug that in, I'm just eyeballing it. We've been here. We've been here. Price is trying to hold over it. Maybe we get that bounce from there to start testing. When we get to probably this area here is where we might see some more resistance to look out for on Palantir. That's around $99. So measure the highs and lows, and you can follow your same trading plan on Palantir from your smaller time frames. SoFi has just been looking interesting. So they did hit this fair value gap. Price stayed above about 12.28. But for some reason, if they lose all of this, this is the weekly. We definitely have that target on the weekly at 904. I'm not saying at all that Palantir is going to get there. I'm just saying it's what it's pointing to now. But if we look at it from the monthly, we are in a 12 EMA on the monthly and also in a fair value gap. So we have to wonder if we'll at some point recover now that we've tested the 12 EMA and see what we do from there. Overall, let's see. Yep, so we had the gap up and we just pulled back and tested the 12. But I don't see too much yet that's telling me we have a solid foundation until we know for sure we're going to hold that 12 and start to bounce back up to those levels that I think I have these levels on my chart and they're probably good levels to follow. Let's get to the daily. Yeah, so see how wide of a state we have been in since like October of 2024? We've been in a wide state. And when I say a wide state, we're so far away from our 12, I'm sorry, our 200 weighted moving average. The price is just trending well above the 12. So we've had some pullbacks, right? January, we got the pullback and price tried to recover. Pre-earnings, we get another pullback. And so we have just pulled back to the daily 200. Oh, actually, we're off of it. We're off of it. We know we have fair value gaps, but we're definitely off the 200 here. So you can again measure your high and your low a day and then just trade this one. I know most people are looking to get their long-term holds in on Palantir. So I do see that if we can keep price holding where we are now as support, then we have a good chance. There's still a chance we can come and test around 1168, somewhere around there. Now, I was looking at this one. It came up on my screener, and I think I like what I see. They have earnings on the 30th of April. And so what we're looking at when we look at it from let's go to the monthly for a second. All right, so one, we can see how high we've been back all the way in 2017, right? Well, this thing just completely kept selling off. And so it's just been kind of trading in this range. And when we look at it from the monthly, we lost the 12 in October, and price is trying to come back and test the 12 around 32.92. So still a downtrend, but they look to have found support, and hopefully that holds, and they have a run leading up to their earnings. That's what I'm looking for. Um, on the weekly, we do have the inverse arc, a nice wick here, a nice $2 move on Tuesday February 18th, the week of February 18th, and then a nice move here, holding above the 12 EMA, and this was the candle for last week. Now, what I'm looking at is three $32.69 breaking, and we also have support around this previous day low, but I want to get to the daily and see what I see here. Okay, on the daily, we have been in a I'm sorry, a wide state where price was trading under the 200. We closed to a narrow space, and now we are testing the 200. So we want price to hold above the 200 here on the daily. And then we also want to try to start breaking that high 32.69. And then you have this space here that I'm interested in where we can come and test 35.29. I haven't checked the contracts yet to see the pricing of it. Well, I did do a glance and it actually wasn't expensive to go in the money on this one. So again, earnings is let's get the date of earnings. April 30th. Looking at the 4 hour, we have a closer range to test around 33.46. Not a bad strike price. And here we go. On the 3 hour, we have a supply zone that's been here since the 20, November 25th. So we've come back to, and we do want to see ourselves break out of it. But the cool thing is that also kind of puts us breaking out of, um, headed towards the previous day high and trying to break out of that. And then it gives us that 33.40 area as a test. Then you have another nice gap right here to trade in. Um, Overall, I do like this one for the potential earnings run. So that means like I'm anticipating them to have a nice pre-earnings run before they make any type of pullbacks. So last earnings was February 12th last month, and they had a gap down from where they were. So they could be known for doing like a pre-earnings run. So they gapped down, but then price did a real recovery. So interesting to see. I'm going to watch this stock. I do have an alert set at the previous day high. And then again, I'm just looking to see if we can catch a nice move with them leading up to their earnings. Obviously, they've been somewhere before when you look to the left, and maybe we can get to testing some of the resistance all up here. All right, guys, I feel like I've talked for quite a bit of time, but I did want to get through the list that we have for today. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd love to hear what stocks you're following in the comments. And then let me know what you think about trading based on the last 15 minutes of the previous trading day and basing your support and resistance around that range. Um, Nevertheless, we'll wrap up here. We'll see what tomorrow brings. We do have CPI and PPI data dropping. So trade smart, trade with a plan, have your targets in mind, and stick to your plan. Try not to look over all over the place looking for what everyone else is trading. If you come to the market with your own trading plan, you should have much success just sticking to that. Like and subscribe, and I will do this again soon. Maybe we can get a pre-market live going this week. Thanks, everyone. Bye.